here to talk today about engine 25's foam system. 25 is one of the two trucks that we have in town that has an onboard foam system, 50-gallon foam tank, 750 gallons of water. Engine 21 also has an onboard foam system, 50 gallons of foam, 750 gallons of water, a little bit different. Engine 21 is in a round the pump proportion, a little more complicated. We'll talk about that later. We're here to talk today about this particular truck and its specific foam system and some of its additional capabilities. This truck is a fairly simple foam system to operate. If you can just imagine this setup with a pickup tube that we have on every other truck in town and have for years and years. Imagine this pickup tube and that foam can and just put it behind that panel. That's all there really is to this foam system. It's a series of steps that we'll go through, but it's basically this very simple setup. It's just hidden back there, and it actually makes things a little bit easier. Engine 21 we know is an around the pump proportioner. When you're making foam with engine 21, it's either all foam or all water. This truck has one dedicated foam line. Comes off the back of the truck, 200 foot. Gets used routinely. It routine fires quite frequently. Can pump water through it just fine. But it is the dedicated foam line that this pickup tube is attached to. So there's a couple other things. There's a couple things that we need to be familiar with. This panel is fairly well labeled as far as what the steps are to go through to make foam on this truck. Step one, obviously, tank to pump. Tank to pump needs to be open. It's water from the tank into the pump so we can start making foam. Second step, which is labeled right up here, step 2, is the foam eductor. We want to open this. That opens up, engages the foam eductor, opens up the connection between the discharge side and the pickup tube, which is back there behind the panel. Step 3 is the relief valve. We know we have to, because we know that this relief valve is preset at 150. Based on what we know, our pump discharge pressure for foam operations is going to be 200. We have to crank this relief valve up. It should be preset at 150. So step 3 is to crank this up to the high side to make sure we get it above 200. So when the time comes to make foam, we can generate enough pump discharge pressure to get enough agitation going, enough aeration to have a good foam blanket. Step 4 is pretty simple. This is the metering system for this truck on board. Should be preset at 3%, which is what, like we talked about earlier, hydrocarbons are primarily what we're going to face. That's a 3% foam setting. Should be preset on 3, so all you have to do is check it. The only time it should be necessary to adjust this is if you do have a polar solvent or a non-hydrocarbon fire. You need to make 6% foam, you would have to adjust this up to 6%. But that's step 4, to check your metering valve, make sure you set on 3%. Step 5 is the actual foam valve. It's a quarter turn valve, turn it to the right. Opens up the line between the bottom of the foam tank and the top of the discharge line, the discharge side that this line comes off of. That's step 5. Step 6, the last step is to charge the line, which is labeled left. If you can kind of see, it says left front hose bed. That's sort of a mislabel. I'll talk about that in a minute. That's the last step. Pull this out, charge the line. This is just a 200-foot live line connected on the left side of the pump, on the left side of the hose bed on the back. Like I said, it gets used routinely on structure fires, but it is the dedicated foam line. It's a little bit deceiving out here. This truck came out of the manufacturer. This is labeled left front hose bed. It's been kind of scraped out to try to cover it up because it causes a little confusion. It's labeled front because the piping for this truck, the piping for that discharge comes off the front of the truck. If this were left rear hose bed, the piping, the actual connection, would come off the rear. And that's why this is labeled front. Even though the line deploys off the back, this is labeled left front. It's been kind of scraped out, and it can be a little confusing in the heat of battle. It's something you just need to know. It says front because the plumbing for this line comes off the front of the truck, not the rear. And that's why it's labeled that. And it's also labeled step 6, the final step, for a reason. In the perfect world, you want to charge the line first. You want to give the foam solution and the water a chance to mix up a little bit as it's moving down the line to get to the nozzle. So when the nozzle man cracks that nozzle, all he's got coming out of there is foam. That's the perfect world. That's the way it's designed to be. The reality is a lot of times these foam evolutions evolve after you've already been flowing water. So you may well have this line already charged and flowing water on a boat fire, on some sort of vehicle fire that turns out to be the vehicle fire that you decide now you want to put foam on. This line may already be flowing water. If that's the case, before you go to a foam evolution, the guy on the nozzle just needs to know he's going to have to bail some water off. It's going to take a little while before, because you've got 200 foot of hose line charged with water that you're going to need to bail and lose that water, waste that water until the foam starts coming out of the nozzle. But like I said, in the perfect world, that's why this is the last step. You want to charge this, water starts moving down the line, creates the Venturi effect, pulls the foam out, gives the foam a good 200 feet of hose to mix up before it comes out of the nozzle. This truck, in the last step, once you're all done, very importantly, once you've turned your foam valve off, to shut this all down is just the reverse. But it's very important that after we shut this down, we want to leave everything else open and flowing. And this is a flush valve, which turns a couple of evolutions this way to just turn it and open it and to flush. Foam is very corrosive to all the parts it comes in contact with, all the metal, and it's very important that we flush that until everything looks clear, until it looks clear coming out of the nozzle. You want to make sure you get as much of the foam out of there as you can. It's very corrosive and damaging, especially when it sits for a long time. As opposed to engine 21, which also has an onboard foam system, you cannot contaminate the pump and the tank with foam on this truck because it's a dedicated foam line. We know with engine 21, once you flip that foam switch, there's nothing but foam in the pump housing. So any discharge that you open, you're going to get foam out of, including the tank fill. If you open the tank fill, you can backfeed some foam into the tank. The water tank on the truck, on this particular truck, that's not a problem. There's no way that you can cross-contaminate the water supply with foam. We do have 50 gallons of foam up there on the tank. There are 2 cans of foam in the back. There is a spike up there. If you get a long duration incident, you can pour the foam into the top. You can drop it on there and spike it. This truck also has an auxiliary foam pickup tube. It's a white tube right here, stored in this compartment. Straight chemical connection, like every other chemical connection. Snaps on like this. There's a valve right here for the auxiliary foam pickup. Water turn valve. Open this valve, close this valve, and now you can just operate out of foam cans. Also, in the perfect world, if you are going to do this, you want to operate out of as big a drum as you can, to dump the foam cans into the big drum so that you're not constantly spiking and lifting out and then going back into a can. Every time you lift this up, you're going to burp a little air in, and you're going to get a little bit of straight water come out of the nozzle at the end. So if you can avoid going from can to can to can, the idea is better, which we have on the foam trailer, to dump the cans into a bigger receptacle so that you're not, every time you don't pull this out and burp a little bit of air in every time it comes out into the foam trailer. This truck also, as we can see, it does have a backup system, the good old-fashioned way. Regular Venturi pickup tube, 2 cans of foam. We also have HF350, hydrofoam plate 350 capabilities on this truck. As we see right here, like every other truck, we can snap that on as a master stream and operate the HF350 like we would on any other conventional pumpers that we have. 350 gallons a minute, 100 PSI at the tip to make foam. That's one difference with foam. It's only 100 PSI to here, where you need 200 PSI on every other foam line, also stored in this compartment right here. We have the aerator nozzle, which I optimally want to put on the fog nozzle on the automatic tip. Automatic nozzles do make foam okay, but it's much better if we snap that aerating device on. And what we'll do is we'll demonstrate this whole process in real time. We'll snap this nozzle on, pull the line off, and we'll go through the steps of actually charging the line. For the purposes of training, we can do everything except flow foam out of the tank. Everything else, the steps are all see, it's tough to simulate. This is just straight water. The one rule of thumb is you want to keep in mind with this truck, you get about 2 tanks of water for 1 tank of foam. About 1,500 gallons of water will get you through, you'll burn through about your 50 gallons of onboard foam. You want to be sure, like we talked about in a significant fire, you want to be sure that you have enough foam on hand before you get started to make sure that you don't run out. And you can adjust the nozzle string, the nozzle pattern, with the air on your nozzle. As you can see, just want to make sure, like we talked about earlier, the automatic nozzle has to be all the way open. You can't throttle it back. You want to make sure the nozzle's audible all the way open. That's what's going to keep it on foam. Just a quick review. Fairly simple system. Imagine that Venturi system in the can of foam up behind the pump panel. That's all it is. Keep your eye on those steps. In the perfect world, you want to charge the line of last so you get foam coming out the nozzle without any raw water that you have to lose. Not always possible. A couple other things to keep in mind. The rule of thumb with this truck, it's about 2 tanks of water to 1 tank of foam. You want to keep an eye on your foam consumption. You want to be sure if you've got a significant fire, not just a little vapor suppression, you've got sufficient foam on location before you get started. This truck does have the same master swing capability that the other trucks do with the HF350. And last but not least, you have to flush. It's very important that you flush anything that comes in contact with foam as much as you can with fresh water when you're all done. And basically, that's it.